This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the Mark Weber.
Dub them ease.
And we are back for another edition of The Onside Kick right here on Most Valuable Podcast, your one-stop shop for everything NFL on YouTube. There's more people that talk about NFL, but for MVP, this is your one-stop shop for the NFL. This is it. It starts here, it ends here.
If you want NFL content, you come here and nowhere else.
And it is an interesting time, Mark, because it's the off season. It's like I told Dave and Sean, because like on the fast break, we're rearing up for the draft and everything, and I said, you know what, me and you are kind of in this like purgatory right now, where it's like the draft just ended, we had our winners and losers, we're not quite ready to start previewing teams for next year, so we're in this kind of limbo state. So I came up with something today, and it's great that I was thinking of it, because apparently the topic we talked about, or we're going to talk about now, you thought about earlier today, so me and you on the same wavelengths from different areas of where we were at, a couple miles apart between us, but we're going to start doing fantasy football rankings coming into this year. So we're going to start today with ranking fantasy football quarterbacks. Then we'll do running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, defenses, and special teams, and end it off with kickers, and that'll be gret. Because
we're actually going to talk about kickers.
No, we are. We're going to do a whole podcast on kickers. But after that, then we go right into our team previews and our divisional previews, which will take us all the way until like mid-August. We take a week off, playoff predictions. So it's pretty much boom, boom, boom with these fantasy rankings all the way through. So how we're going to do it is we have 3 segments here on YouTube. It'll be 3 segments. Blog Talk Radio, podcast services around the world. You'll listen all the way through. We're going to start from the bottom. So we're going to start 32, go all the way through, end with our number 1. And before we get into it, little housekeeping here at the beginning. You want to help support MVP, make sure to check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. We changed the $5 tier, so go check that out. It is a new tier. Well, same price, but it is a new tier, new reward system. For that,
I'm excited for it. I think you guys are going to like it.
You're awesome because you came up with it.
Yeah.
That's why you're excited.
That's why I'm excited. But no, I think you guys are going to like it because it's just better. I think it's better.
No, and it's something that I think will be a lot better than what we used to have with the Q&A. Also, if you want an MVP t-shirt, the one that Mark's wearing right there, make sure to check the store link down below in the description, mostvaluablepodcast.com. You can also check out the store there, but you can also check out everything for MVP. Goes up to mostvaluablepodcast.com. And then last but not least, if you're on iTunes, make sure to give the Onside Kick a 5-star rating on iTunes. It would mean the world to us, and it lets everyone know, hey, this is a great podcast. You should check it out. And they go, yeah, sure. And they go ahead and click it, and then they are part of the MVP family, or as Sean calls them on Twitter, the MVP fam. But we're going to start with our quarterback rankings. We're going to first segment.
God, I'm so excited to start at the bottom.
22. Well, this is the first time that you have started at the bottom. Because like on big boards for the PTP, for our rankings on the fast break, we start from the bottom and then go to the top. So we'll start off 32 through 22. Starting at the bottom, number 32, the quarterback of the New York Jets, Josh McCown. Then the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. It's weird to say. I almost said Buffalo Bills. Cleveland Browns, Tyrod Taylor. Then Miami Dolphin, Ryan Tannehill coming in at number 30. Joe Flacco, the quarterback of the Ravens, at 29. Then we got rookie quarterbacks. Some people might be upset about this. They might say A.J. McCarron, but both Mark and I agreed. We're going to put Josh Allen as the starter for the Bills. He is right there at 28. 27, Jaguar quarterback Blake Bortles. Then at 26, Bengal quarterback Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle. And then we got Case Keenum at number 25. And I said Andy Dalton's name not wrong. It's not the Red Rifle.
I'm surprised.
It's the Red Rocket.
I'm surprised.
And that's what he is throwing to A.J. Green. But at 25, we've got Case Keenum, the quarterback of the Denver Broncos. Then Oakland Raider quarterback Derek Carr at number 24. Eli Manning, the quarterback of the G-Men in New York, at 23. And then rounding everything out, number 22, quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Jameis Winston. So I'm going to throw it over to you, Mark.
All right.
Which one of these quarterbacks do you want to start with? Because we're not going to hit all of them. We're going to talk about a few of them. what are you thinking about? What's one quarterback you want to start with?
I'm going to group a few things here.
Okay.
And it is the question marks quarterback. So
there's a
three
lot of them here.
Well, for sure, there's three big question marks. I'll say there are four. There are four. That is Josh McCown, Tyrod Taylor, Josh Allen, and I'm going to throw Joe Flacco in there.
I'd throw one more.
Who's that?
Ryan Tannehill, just because he's coming off an injury.
But I'm only saying that because there is a rookie behind them, or in Josh Allen's case, he is the rookie.
Okay.
So that's what I'm saying with that. But I'm right there with you with Ryan Tannehill coming off of injury as well. But, these are people where...
So basically all of our quarterbacks from like 28
at the bottom. Well, that's the thing. That's what I'm saying for fantasy football. 110% avoid them at all costs. I like Tyrod Taylor. I would take him as a backup if there wasn't Baker Mayfield sitting right there. These are people where there's not a guarantee that they're going to start. And even if they do start, when are they going to stop? I think it can be agreed between the two of us. Josh McCown, Tyrod Taylor, if it is A.J. McCarron, those three guys will not play the full season. Joe Flacco should play the full season, but I don't know. Apparently Harbaugh loves... Lamar Jackson's accuracy. I think that's just a silly headline that everyone was excited about. But anyways, at any point, these guys could get benched. And you don't want to waste a draft pick in fantasy football on a guy that's going to get benched at some point and no longer play. It's too valuable. I got Kareem Hunt in the second to the last round of the fantasy football draft. And our draft is weird.
Well, you got him in the rookie round, if I'm not mistaken. Did you?
I got him at the second to last round.
Okay.
It was the very end.
Because we do have a rookie round.
We do. Our whole thing is weird. We don't need to get into it right now, but there's specific things you do in specific rounds. At the very end, it was a flex round, I'm pretty sure, if I remember right. And I said, well... I don't know who else to feel good about in Kansas City. I'll take Kareem Hunt. So you can get good guys later. And you don't want to waste one on a Tyrod Taylor as your backup quarterback when he maybe gets benched week 3, 4, 5.
Now, here's the thing I'm looking at. Every quarterback that you just listed, I agree with except for Joe Flacco. And the reason why I say that is...
I don't think he'll necessarily get benched.
Well, for me, the Ravens are an interesting one because it's like, John Harbaugh likes Lamar Jackson. People are saying, Marty Morningwig. He's a guy who, worked with Michael Vick. He was with so-and-so. He works with that mobile quarterback. He can work with Lamar Jackson. Here's the thing for me. Number one, when it comes to the will Joe Flacco sit, will he get benched? We don't know if Lamar Jackson is going to be the second on the depth chart or the third because don't forget, they did sign RG3. So what I'm kind of thinking... is no, don't do that. The way I'm thinking,
too late. It's been done.
Joe Flacco plays the whole year this year. RG3 is kind of like that quarterback, that veteran on the sideline to mentor Lamar Jackson while Joe Flacco's doing his thing. Also, the thing with Joe Flacco that I think is interesting in terms of fantasy, last year, no weapons. No weapons for me. Not only this year do they get two, to me, phenomenal tight ends in the draft, a guy like Hayden Hurst who can go out and catch balls, but also a guy in Mark Andrews that caught a lot of footballs from Baker Mayfield at Oklahoma last year. They go out in free agency. They get Willie Snead from the New Orleans Saints. Now, the big question with him is how much of it was him and how much of it was Drew Brees making him better. They get Michael Crabtree, who to me is going to be the number one wide receiver on this team, and they go out and get John Brown from Arizona. So to me, the combination of mainly those five guys, also I'm looking at a guy like Jordan Lastly, who was a main target for Josh Rosen at UCLA. They kind of said, Joe Flacco, we're going to give you weapons. So for
potential weapons.
So for me, fantasy-wise, now I might look into Joe Flacco, maybe not as my starter, but later on I might say, you know what? I maybe don't need to splurge on a backup quarterback. I can go with a wide receiver or running back because later in the rounds, I'll just steal Joe Flacco and he'll be my backup. Of course, if bye weeks line up.
Yeah, and I don't think that... I personally don't believe that Joe Flacco is going to get benched this season. I think he'll play out this full season. This is an Alex Smith-like situation.
He'll get cut.
But if they do really love Lamar and Joe Flacco does things that he's done in recent years, which is not be that great, he might get benched. It's possible.
He could.
The risk to me says I would not draft him. These guys right here are people I don't really want to draft. I would be willing to draft a Jameis, an Eli, a Derek Carr, maybe a Case Keenum, maybe an Andy Dalton at the very end. But these are people I don't necessarily want to draft. These are people who I'm sitting here saying, more likely than not, I would love to have you on a waiver wire, or would at least maybe have you on the waiver wire with like a Josh McCown or Ryan Tannehill, something like that. But for most of these guys, I don't. A question I want to ask you.
Okay.
Do we believe that Eli Manning's going to be back? Because Eli Manning was a decently good fantasy option as a quarterback. I've used him plenty of times. But last year was a down year. The year before that wasn't that spectacular either necessarily. You're saying yes. Why should somebody be willing to draft Eli Manning?
The reason why I'm going to say yes is first and foremost, number one, is that there is a Ben McAdoo's no longer the head coach.
Which is nice.
There is no longer dysfunction in that coaching staff for New York. Plus, bringing over a guy like Pat Shurmur, the way I look at the Giants, I'm not going to pick them to win the Super Bowl. I did that last year, and they bit me in the butt. Or I kiss them, as some would say. Kiss of death style to them. To me, Shurmur coming over is only going to benefit Eli Manning. Giving him guys like Saquon Barkley and Jonathan Stewart in the backfield is going to be help, although you're saying, well, if he hands the ball off, that's not the same thing. However, with Saquon Barkley, he's not just a guy that you hand the ball off to. He's a guy you kick it out to with a pass. So if you throw a pass, that'll get you some points from Eli Manning. Plus, the big question to me otherwise is what are we going to get from Odell this year? Odell was injured last year. Brandon Marshall was injured last year. Of course, Marshall's now cut. Your main three wide receivers as of right now, looking at the depth chart, are Odell Beckham, Cody Latimer, who you're getting from the Denver Broncos in free agency, and it looks like Sterling Shepard are going to be your main 1, 2, 3.
Sterling Shepard, number 2.
Well, number 2. So you can order those however you want. Right now,
show the man some respect.
Right now, Sterling Shepard is slotted in the slot when it comes to the depth chart I'm looking at. But Eli's going to have weapons around him. It's going to be a better team than last year. And he's actually going to have a coach that will have a good control over this locker room. Won't be a Ben McAdoo situation. And last year was kind of complicated for Eli because it was like, hey, you're going good. Hey, we're going to bench you.
Yeah.
And that, I think, just messed with the psyche of the entire season.
But it happened at the end of the season when it didn't matter for fantasy football anyways.
Exactly. And that's like Eli, I think, is a guy where if it's me, I'm drafting him later on, maybe to potentially, hey, be my backup in a bye, but also drafting him to where it's like, hey, he's my backup, but, you know, if I didn't get that strong of a starter, if I got like not like a Derek Carr, but if I got like a Mitch Trubisky and Alex Smith as my starter, you know, maybe I draft Eli on the uptick that, hey, maybe he has a good year and then becomes my starter late in the year.
I kind of feel like with Eli, if you're wondering what Eli Manning is going to be in fantasy football, all you really have to do is look at Sam Bradford, look at Case Keenum, you know, pull the Minnesota Vikings quarterbacks together and that offense together to see what's going to happen.
Well, I look
not
at what
necessarily
Case Keenum
something you're that excited about like, fantasy football wise.
Well, I look at what Case Keenum was able to do with Shurmur, and if Odell Beckham is healthy, that is tenfold because Odell is better than any wide receiver that the Vikings have. No dissing on my team. We just don't have an Odell Beckham on our team, and it's just, I'm sorry, Eli Manning to me is a better quarterback than Case Keenum. So
100%.
To me,
but what I'm
Pat
saying
Shurmur
is,
should be able to get more out of Eli.
What I'm saying is you look at the team and you look at what they did, and it's not anything that you want to be excited about fantasy football-wise. You do for Saquon Barkley, and that's a conversation for next week.
Was it coaching? Was coaching the main reason?
Well, that's his game plan.
Exactly. Was it Ben McAdoo's problem? And now that
No. I'm talking about Pat Shurmur. Pat Shurmur's game plan is going to be great for not Odell.
Better for Saquon is what
great
you're
saying. For Saquon, a little less for Eli. Where Ben McAdoo was promises of, and even when I'm talking about more when he was an offensive coordinator, than the coach, but it was, we're going to throw the ball all day. That's all we're going to do. That's why they got Brandon Marshall. That's why they brought him in, was to throw the ball on everybody.
You know who else is going to, and I know this isn't going to help an Eli discussion, but you know who else is going to benefit from Pat Shurmur, who we'll probably talk about in a couple weeks?
Who's that?
And that's the tight end, Evan Ingram, because Kyle Rudolph was a main target for Case Keenum. Last guy I'm kind of thinking about that I want to throw out, though, is Derek Carr, because he's a guy to me where I think it was either last year or 2 years ago, he was my starting quarterback, and he was a solid starter.
And a lot of people targeted him in this last year's draft.
Exactly. But what are you thinking with him coming into this year? Because to me, the big question first and foremost is there's a lot, like John Gruden, and because of that, there's a lot of turnover. However, you look at his potential receivers, tight end, he's got Jared Cook, who's no slouch, but he's no elite pass catcher. Then in wide receivers, they go out and trade for Martavius Bryant. They still have Amari Cooper. They go inside and Jordy Nelson, who was a main target for Aaron Rodgers. And then in the draft, they go and grab a guy who I think could be a possible sleeper for late in the season in Marcel Aitman, who was a big target for Mason Rudolph at Oklahoma State. What's your kind of thought?
Even their running backs, too.
Exactly. Their running backs in Lynch, Martin, Jalen Richard. They've got Washington, who also gets into the mix as well. What are your thoughts on Derek Carr with all the change and turnover going on in Oakland?
My thing for Derek Carr is I think he, more than almost anybody, is the boom or bust draft pick.
Okay.
If you get Derek Carr, you are banking on that he's going to boom. He's going to be great. But I don't see a way where Derek Carr is an average quarterback in fantasy football this year. I see he's either going to be fantastic or Gruden 3.0 does not work, and it's not going to happen. And I'm nervous about it because you look at some of the things he does, and I don't like Jordy Nelson because he was on the Packers. I can never like him, but he's a damn good wide receiver. But there were injury concerns there.
Yeah.
You know, I look at Cooper, but with Cooper and Crabtree last year, you know, they didn't do as much as people expected. Still did a fine job, obviously, but they didn't elevate Derek Carr as much as people kind of expected. Lynch doesn't look the same as he used to. You had the muscle hamster Doug Martin out there who, he's an enigma. All the time. You never really know, is he going to be that great guy? He shows those flashes, and then at other times, not so much.
Well, I believe he was injured for a little part of last year.
But yeah, he was. But even before that, too, he's that guy where he will have a huge flash and look amazing, and then other times disappear.
Exactly.
So there's all these type of situations here where I say Derek Carr is either going to be a top 10 fantasy football quarterback, or he's going to be at the very bottom. And what this is what I looked at it is how comfortable am I drafting this guy? And I'm not very comfortable taking a risk in fantasy football on a quarterback. I will take a risk on a running back or a wide receiver because those, to me, when you take a risk on a Kareem Hunt or when Jordan Howard was a rookie and you took the risk on him late to say maybe he'll be good, maybe he won't, who knows.
Well,
you're safer to do that.
You know my draft strategy. In a typical, I know our league is different, so I can't have this strategy.
Yeah.
But in a traditional fantasy draft, I am a guy running back. That's what I'm going. I'm getting my starting 2 running backs out of the gate. Because that's the position that's going to get me the most points.
Yeah.
I'll be completely honest, and saying this probably isn't the best idea because you, me, Dave, Sean,
I think
we're
we've
all
all
in the same
figured out your
league.
strategies.
A running back I'm going to be targeting this year is Saquon Barkley. If I get him, I'll be happy.
Well,
I'll be extremely happy.
You can say that because
targeting.
we all would expect anybody to be willing to take Saquon Barkley.
But because I think Derek Carr is going to, what I'm going to say bleeds into the next question I was going to ask. Before I ask the final question I have for this part of our rankings, any guys that we haven't mentioned that you're like, you know what? I want to give a little snippet about this guy.
My snippet is I think Case Keenum, even though I'm low on him, I think he will be a very solid backup quarterback for fantasy football.
Okay. I thought I was like, backup for the Broncos?
No.
Who's he getting benched by?
Paxton Lynch.
Paxton Lynch, baby?
Paxton Lynch, who very well might get cut. No, I think he'll be a very good backup for some people to be able to go ahead and draft
depending on when your starter's bias.
Exactly. He's a matchup dependent kind of guy, but that's a good team. That is a very good team. And you know who has got a great defense? Make it work. The Denver Broncos have an amazing defense. They're going to be a top 5 defense this year. So without a doubt, he's going to have his opportunities to be on the field.
I almost said your guy, but it's Sean's guy because I forgot you weren't here this week. They drafted Sean's guy at the tight end position, one of the sleepers that we mentioned in Troy Fumagalli, Illinois-born kid. So, I mean, they drafted him. They also got Jake Butt, the Michigan tight end also. But, I mean, their top 3 wide receivers, I mean, Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, and then their now new number 3, Cortland Sutton.
Yeah,
so
which is a steal.
He's going to be a great option, I think, for them. The last question I wanted to ask, though, before we wrap this segment up is basically, who do you think out of here? Because some people are going to look at these rankings and go, no way does Derek Carr finish with the, where do we have him at? With the 24th most points in fantasy this year.
Sure.
Who's the one guy from this bracket, 22 through 32, that you think after their performance this year, when we do these rankings next year, they're going to move up into the next bracket?
Well, the first thing I want to say is to people to remind you guys of, I think we're not predicting where these people are going to be at the end of the year.
This is just who we would draft.
Exactly. This is the order we're willing to draft these people.
And we're combining your and my
exactly.
ranking.
So some of these were Ricky's higher on them than I am, whatever. So this is a tricky question that you're asking, and I'll answer it in 2 different ways.
Okay.
One, the safe answer is one of these rookies. You know, probably like a Baker Mayfield. You know, he's the guy who's going to probably shoot himself up.
He's not on our
exactly.
list.
That's the thing. So, like, one of those guys will obviously shoot their way up. But you got to say it because someone in the comment section is going to mention it.
Baker Mayfield could win the job from Tyrod Taylor.
And he will. He probably will week 1.
Although Hugh Jackman apparently promised Tyrod the job already, right?
He gave him a good old promise with a wink wink and his
and a nudge.
And it crossed behind his fingers. Anyways, the real answer is the obvious one. It's Derek Carr.
Okay.
Derek Carr is the guy who I think this season, even though I'm not high on Gruden, this season I think he very easily, and if Gruden works out, he'll propel himself right back up to where people had him before, possibly a top 10 fantasy quarterback.
To me, I was thinking too, Derek Carr was one of them because I think with Derek Carr, them adding the receivers they did this year around Amari Cooper, it's only going to help Derek Carr.
Yeah.
Plus, I mean, they've got the stable of running backs also that could catch the ball out of the backfield. The other one to me, and I know this is going to contradict what I'm saying because I feel like this will be his last year in Baltimore, but Joe Flacco. Same situation, though, because, I mean, although they have Lamar Jackson behind him, this is one where I feel like if Joe Flacco's cut, he'll find a job somewhere else. And with the performance that he's going to give this year, with the receivers that he has now, the Willie Sneads, the Crabtree pulling free, the John Browns, he's going to play a lot better. The Hurst, the Andrews, like I said, he's going to play a lot better than where next year people are going to go, hey, you know what? Maybe I should be a little higher on Joe Flacco. Look at what kind of a year he had last year.
And one more shout out, just I don't want to necessarily say he's going to shoot up because I don't really know what to expect out of him. But just if Jameis Winston,
when was one of us gonna say it?
Right,
I was waiting for it.
If Jameis Winston and that offense can perform how they should, I mean, on paper,
apparently a commenter said. Apparently, a commenter last week in our Redskin one said it was a good podcast until I said the Redskins were going to beat the Buccaneers because to watch out, the Bucs are going to be
ruined
back.
it. Yeah, I mean, you know, Deshaun Jackson.
ruined the podcast.
Deshaun Jackson, Mike Evans. I mean, with Jameis Winston, it should, but it just hasn't happened yet. I don't know. It makes sense, but you know, when's it going to happen? That's my question.
That's exactly it. And I mean, I'm looking at any additions, really. I mean, Ronald Jones they got in the backfield, but I mean, they didn't add any huge wide receivers as well. But this is where I want to turn the conversation on you. What do you think about these quarterbacks that we're talking about, these quarterbacks in our 22 through 32? Let me know what you think about them down below in the comment section.